Welcome to the Redemption Podcast with your hosts, Staci
and Julia.
Welcome to Season 3, Episode 2 of Redemption. Today, our guest is Adrienne Bozzini with the Alaska Anti-Trafficking Coalition. Welcome, Adrienne.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming today. Before we get started, though, let's see if Isaac has any housekeeping for us.
Well, we're on video, which is cool.
Yeah,
and
it is.
We had another video released for our first episode with Julia that was talking all about the Trend Fashion Show and Redemption's new clothing line that is available for purchase now at redemptionapparelak.com. You have 4 different types of clothing to choose for and 4 different designs with Alaskan flowers and positive themes and quotes on the back. It's really, really cool. We're super excited and happy about the product. If you haven't seen the video that talks about it being featured at Trend and the design process, and we talked with some clients that were involved in making everything, go check that out now. I would recommend our YouTube since, again, there's a lot of visuals associated with it. And also go buy some. You can get it redemptionapparelak.com, or if you rather shop in person, you can get it at limited amount of items at Black Birch Books, or you can get items at Bow and Arrow Mercantile in Palmer, and shortly when they reopen, Bow and Arrow Mercantile in Wasilla.
Oh, I'm so excited about
Super
that.
exciting stuff.
They are
yes.
really beautiful too. You need to check them out.
Yeah, and that's why Julia isn't here, is because she's trying to get the inventory finished so that we can get all that stuff over there. So that's why I'm filling in for her today.
We miss you, Julia. Okay. Well, before we get started, let me just read a little bit about Adrienne. Adrienne is the founder of the Alaska Anti-Trafficking Coalition. The Trafficking Coalition's goal is to educate and try to meet the unique needs of Alaska's communities. Adrienne is passionate about mobilizing communities, including local law enforcement, churches, families, professionals across industries to identify and respond to human trafficking in their community. Her work is focused on the identification, education, and prevention of human trafficking in Alaska. Thank you so much, Adrienne, for agreeing to come on today to Redemption Podcast. I was so excited. I met Adrienne in Juneau. We went in January back for the Justice Human Traffic Week, and we walked into Representative Sarah Vance's office, and there she was, and we got to introduce, and we shook hands, and we immediately just could recognize the passion in each other. And I knew I had to hear more about the work that she's doing. And she's been doing amazing work. And so were you born here in Alaska, or where are you from?
No, I was born and raised most of my high school years in or through high school in Oregon on a little farm. I'm a farm girl.
Farm girl. Okay.
Yeah, but I've been up here since I moved up here at 18 years old. So I've been an Alaskan for a long time.
For a long, long time. Okay.
Yeah, minus a few years in there where we went stateside, but it always pulls you back.
Right. It does.
Yeah.
It does. So
Yeah.
when I met you, you said that you were also in this anti-trafficking work. And so what got you started into this work? Because I mean, this is a hard, heavy work to do. And most people that I met always seem to have like a backstory. And so is there?
Yeah. Well, my daughter, my husband and I, we have a daughter that, disappeared on us with pretty much a human trafficker. But even before that, was back in 2018. But even before that, I was just a girl that was, had a heart for victims, especially battered women, just because of my own past and how I was raised, and then fell in. I was married prior to my husband now of 18 years to another man for 14 years. And it was a very toxic, abusive relationship. And so life just was hard. And so I've been through a lot myself as a young girl. And I think I just had a heart for victims. I wanted to see them set free, and I had a heart to help them. And so it even started before that, but fast forward to 2018, and all of a sudden our own daughter came up missing, and it just it stopped me in my tracks. It stopped us. It nearly killed us. And I think that's kind of hard
Yeah, I'm
stuff, you
so
know.
sorry that
So
happened to your daughter. That's probably the most terrifying thought that any parent can think of happening is your
yeah,
kid disappearing and
yeah.
human trafficker and not being able to find or locate them.
Adrienne, how old was your daughter when she went missing?
I think she had just turned 21. What ended up happening is, before she went missing, we started picking up on some red flags that something wasn't right in her life. And she just started acting unusual, not herself. She became more distant, not picking up the phone and calling. And she just came to me one day and she just said, you know, I'm moving. It was literally out of the middle of nowhere. And I knew that something was wrong. Like every hair on my head was at attention. You know, I just had this sick feeling. And so I found out that she was going to go with this friend that she had met back in college when she was going to college in Oregon. And he had come up here to get her, and he was going to get her out of here. I very quickly, because I had been educated on human trafficking a few years before all of this, when I lived in Oregon for 5 years, I knew a little bit of red signs or red flags to look for, and I knew that we got a situation on our hands, and I did not know what to do, honestly. At that time, you're just scared out of your mind. And so I reached out to Priceless Alaska, and they very quickly an intervention and team to come and to my store that I had at the time. And we got her to come to the store without her knowing that she was about to be put through an intervention, because she was leaving in like 3 days. She was flying. And they very quickly, we all got the police involved, FBI involved. We called, you know, Oregon police from where he was from, and nobody could do anything. Nobody could do anything. So because she was over the age of 18. So that's kind of how it started. And she didn't believe us because he had groomed her. They said they think that he had been grooming her for probably about 2 years, and slowly getting her separate from everyone she loved and cared about. So and she believed him, and she was supposed to come home with us that night. We finally kind of sort of convinced her that, you know, this is a bad guy. She ended up disappearing that night. We never saw her again after that. And she just literally disappeared into the night. 2 years went by before we heard from her. The FBI was pretty much able to scare him into warning him if he took her and tried to cross borders that with her, that, you know, he would be arrested immediately. But they really couldn't touch him because he hadn't been in trouble for human trafficking yet or anything. So our hands were pretty much tied as parents, and law enforcement's hands were tied, because the way the law is written, especially here in Alaska, it just does not, you know, because she was over age, she wasn't considered a runaway. She wasn't considered a human sex trafficked victim. She wasn't considered any of that except for a young person that was, you know, going to go sow her oats, you know, in the world. And
Right.
we knew that that's not what was happening. We knew it was a super serious situation. So yeah, 2 years went by before we heard from her again. After that, it was a handful of times that we got a text message from her pretty much saying that, you know, she was alive or high, and then months on end there was silence, you know, when we would try to text her and stuff. So it was pretty brutal. Just
Yeah.
last year she's been able to get away from that guy. He had her, he sold her on fans only. Her life, he very quickly got her into modeling. Some of the pictures that I've seen, there wasn't much on, and I'm sure there's much worse out there, but he knew how to use her. I mean, she was his meal ticket, and he definitely sold her. And so anyways, but yeah, just in the last year, she has been able to get away from him. She's trying to start her life over again. She's very broken. It will take years of and some counseling if she chooses to go to counseling and stuff. So we're at that in
Right.
that space, that transition space of coming out of that kind of stuff and learning to kind of enter back into the world, the workforce, things like that, and live your life again and still deal with the shame of your
Right.
past. And so that's kind of where we're at with her right now.
Right. Well, I just want to encourage you that, like, I was trafficked as well, and so there is hope to be
Oh,
healed
absolutely.
and
Yeah.
go on, but that therapy was key, and it's huge
Mhm.
to help
Yeah.
get past the shame, to recognize you were a victim, you were,
Right.
being forced to do these things, and so she can be healed, and she will be better, and she will be stronger.
Yeah. Oh,
And
yes,
thank you
absolutely.
for sharing that story. I know that's a really hard story, and that's a terrifying story, but I'm so thankful that it has a good ending.
It does. It does. She's so much better than where she was at. And we're just very thankful. And we considered it a complete miracle that she was even able to get away from him because most victims don't, they
Right.
don't, it's not easy for them to get away whatsoever. And so we considered ourselves very blessed and thankful that, she
Yeah.
was able to do that. So
So
yeah.
this is your passion, and this is your
Yeah.
why of why
Yeah.
you do what you do. And
Yeah.
so in here, with the Alaska Anti-Trafficking Coalition, you have Trucker Freedom Fighters. What is that?
Yeah. So trucker freedom fighters. So in about a year and a half ago, I started working at Alaska Driving Academy, and
Yeah.
as their enrollment coordinator, and they do a chapter on human trafficking.
Okay.
And I got to listening to it one day, and I realized that even though it is a good chapter, there was a lot more that needed to be said, and they knew our backstory, and so together we just kind of started. They gave me their they just blessed me and said, go for it and do the training. And so I started creating this organization and this training, and in hopes to just educate every CDL driver, because they
Mm,
are the ones out there in the most of the places where victims are being trafficked and or sold or transported.
right.
So I just started to develop this organization.
And something that you talked about in your story was that, fortunately, and this isn't always the case for parents in this situation, but you were able to recognize some of the red flags that your daughter was being trafficked. Could you
Mhm.
talk about what some of those red flags are?
Yeah.
Red flags. Some of those would be something like if you go to a gas station and you happen to notice a young girl or a child or even a boy. It doesn't. It could be any sex. And so let's say she's standing over in the corner. She's not really buying anything. She's not really leaving either. She's just kind of hanging out, looking a little nervous. And she's got on maybe a little bit revealing clothing or mini skirt and tank top, and it's the middle of winter and everyone else is coming in snow gear,
Mm.
hats and gloves and stuff. I would say something's not right there. That would my red flag, would pop up and be like, what's going on there? And then something like if you were at a truck stop down in the States, especially, what that might look like. A semi truck sitting there um, amongst other semi trucks, and somebody turns on their flashers, the big flashers on the semi trucks. That's usually an indication that that is a buyer and they are looking to buy someone
Huh.
for sex. That's another one, like out on, at truck stops and stuff. Trucker Freedom Fighters' mission is simple: educate every CDL school and Alaska CDL driver in hopes to create a safer Alaska for our children and families. We train CDL drivers to understand differences between human trafficking, human sex trafficking, and human smuggling. We also teach what red flags to look for, help them to identify a victim or trafficker, and how to safely report it to the authorities immediately so that a victim can be rescued. CDL drivers work in a broad range of job spectrums and industries, from bus and cab drivers to postal delivery and construction, to North Slope, ports, rural areas, and villages. Each CDL driver is extremely valuable to help combat human trafficking in the state of Alaska or wherever their CDL takes them in the world. There are around 2.4 million truckers in the United States. That is a huge army of trained superheroes to help combat human trafficking and help save lives.
So are you offering that here in Alaska?
Yes, that's here in Alaska at Alaska Driving Academy. It is a truck driving school for CDL drivers.
Okay. All right. So
Program.
every
Mhm.
CDL driver is trained then with this program.
Yes. Yes.
I
Really
love
cool.
that. I love that because I think that's awesome to bring education awareness to those who are out on the road a lot and going to see this a lot.
Right, right. Yeah, I really believe that if we can get them trained to how to identify a trafficker or a victim, and then teach them that, they don't have to be afraid to pick up that phone and call that hotline. Um, that is a huge army of people that we can literally help combat human trafficking, and make a dent in it for sure.
It's called Operation Broken Sparrow.
Yeah.
What does Broken
Operation,
Sparrow do?
yeah, Operation Broken Sparrow was kind of just birthed out of my situation with our daughter. Um, so when she went missing, we were we go to church and everything, and at the time, they didn't know what to do with us. We were hemorrhaging out of our sides, our world had just been turned upside down. And so for us, we went to the church. That's what people do, right? When you need help, and people turn to the church. And we found that we didn't get any help. They didn't know what to do with us. It was uncomfortable for them to even talk about it because they didn't, what do you mean human trafficking? It's not even a thing here in Alaska, right? And
Right.
so churches, they don't know what they don't know, until they learn and get educated, right? And then they know how to go about it. But pretty much Operation Broken Sparrow, I'll just read my little write-up on it.
Yeah.
Operation Broken Sparrow is a division of Alaska Anti-Trafficking Coalition. We want families, businesses, organizations, and churches to be educated on human trafficking. There are real predators out there, and they know exactly how to lure your kids and loved ones away. Using force, fraud, or coercion through methods of online gaming, friendship, social media, romance, runaways, and youth groups. We as parents and community now more than ever need to be in the know about how to identify a trafficker and recognize behavioral changes in our loved ones quickly that might be the results of a trafficker grooming and operating in their life. Operation Broken Sparrow is designed to teach you the red flags to look for, safe gaming practices, social media protection, trafficker code language, how to identify a victim, and how to identify a trafficker. We also train churches on how to set up a trauma team so that when a person of any trauma comes in for help, you are trained, educated, know your community, resources, and are ready to assist people in need of immediate help. Victims of human trafficking are all around us. They desperately need us to recognize the signs, see them, and make the call. Most victims cannot be rescued without being noticed by an individual and reported. It is extremely important to educate yourself, your business staff, and your church and your family members about human trafficking. Our training for businesses is geared towards training and equipping staff how to identify red flags, which kind of human trafficking they might be witnessing, and how to report it safely. So it just depends on who the audience is, who invites us in to speak to them. If it's a gas station that wants more training, we talk to them about what red flags to look for in that type of a setting. If it's a church, then we go in and we speak to them. Is going to their youth groups. Are you running background checks on people? Are you educating the kids? Age appropriately, of course, but
Well, yeah, right.
yeah, but are you educating the kids in your church, about how to identify a trafficker and how to be safe online when you are online gaming, and talking to friends and stuff. And so, yeah, so that's just kind of a
Yeah,
little bit about Operation Broken Sparrow.
education is so important. I really love that part of what going into churches, especially and youth groups and the
Yeah.
kids. And like I have the Speak Up curriculum is K through 12, age appropriate evidence-based. We need to teach the
Awesome.
kids when to recognize when they're being groomed, or online or in person, and then how to
Yeah.
get help and who do they trust, right?
Yes, it's
And
absolute key.
right. And I mean, and this goes to all the sectors of our communities. It could be, schools. We have people in schools who are trafficking kids are trafficking kids in schools, right?
Oh,
Even, I
absolutely.
mean, even churches, like you said, the background checks of your youth pastors and stuff. Because I mean, there is stuff going on in churches too. And so,
Right, right.
uh, I just love that. How can people get you to come to a training, or how do they get involved with this if this really speaks to them?
Yeah, so they can go to my website, Alaska Anti-Trafficking Coalition.com, and or they can contact me by phone 907-252-3658, and just reach out to me. Let me know what you want me to come and speak to you about, train you. If I can't, I will find someone that can. You know.
Okay.
And we
Awesome.
know that the want in the community is there, and in part that's because of the work that Staci and Adrienne, both of you do. There, I think
Yeah.
that finally, as a community, we're waking up that to the fact that this is an issue that is affecting
Right.
more people around you than you could ever possibly imagine. Right?
Mhm.
Right.
And the awareness piece, the great thing about it is that there is that desire for the community as a whole, I think, to learn about those red flags, to learn what to look for. But Adrienne, something that you brought up earlier in this podcast, again, going back to your lived experience with going through this with your daughter,
Mhm.
you and law enforcement knew that your daughter was being groomed and was being trafficked, and there was
Yep.
nothing that you could do about it. And so
No.
the awareness piece,
Yeah.
so important, and it's an easy step for us to take because people want to know. But there's a much harder battle that I know that us at my house, that you at the coalition are fighting, and that's
Mhm.
how can we make it so that there is something that we can do when we know that this is going on and we have proof that we have an individual that's being trafficked. Can you talk a little bit about what the coalition is doing on that front?
So we just got back. I just got back from Juneau, and going to the Capitol, and um meeting with the representatives and senators and stuff. And I'm really pushing HB 68, the bill HB 68, because right now we need the laws to be looked at. They haven't been looked at or changed in a very, very, very long time. And right now, our world is changing so fast that we do not have laws in place to protect victims or to identify traffickers. A lot of people get thrown, a lot of victims get thrown into like domestic violence, or uh, they get thrown in as a runaway or something. But why? There's got to be an investigation past that. And so and traffickers, they get a slap on the wrist because they beat somebody up, they slap the woman around a little bit, and so they get domestic violence on them, and then they're right back out either the next day or within a week or two, and they're doing it again. And so our laws are not good enough whatsoever. And so we are desperately, there's a whole bunch of us that are really pulling together and fighting this thing, and really trying to share our hearts about our concern. Like we can't do anything. We're spinning our wheels until we get something like HB 68 or any law that is for protecting victims, and prosecuting Johns even.
Right.
Um, and so that's a big deal. That would give us some traction, because we can keep doing educating, but if they just throw them in under as a domestic violence, well, then those people are right back on the street, either being sold, or the victims are right back, to being sold, or the trafficker is right out there
Right.
gathering up more people to sell,
Right.
or
Yeah. The
so.
thing I like about HB 68 is that it's going to address the demand side of
Right,
trafficking, meaning
right,
that if a person goes and recklessly buys sex from someone that they're not going to check into to see if, one, if they're over 18, or two, are they a victim and being forced to sell
right,
sex? against their will, then they need to be held accountable. And if this bill passes, then they will get a Class C sex felony. So I like that it's going to address the demand side. Then also the part about this bill, for as a service provider and working with survivors of trafficking, about expunging the records that they got while they were under the duress of a trafficker, whether it be a
Right.
level criminal charge of theft or drugs, and then the prostitution charges. So we could get those expunged because, as you know, it's hard for them to get housing when they have those charges on their record. And it's not fair because they were forced to do this. So I
Right.
love some of the language in this bill. There's also some other bills that are real important. I just want to mention real quick, which is
Yeah.
we have HB 265, which is changing that word child pornography to what it
Mhm.
really is, child sexual abuse material. I think it needs to be
Right.
called what it is. I mean, to me, I will say
Yep.
child rape videos because that's what they
It
are.
is.
This is
It is.
not a consentable thing. A child can't consent to this. And so it is child sex abuse material. I think that one should definitely be an easy
Right.
pass. And then also there is HB 254, which is going to make distributing pornography, they're going to hold people liable for distributing pornography to minors on the internet. I mean, that's huge. It's everywhere on the internet. And no one really does this thing
It
where
is.
they look for the age to see if this child is over 18 or not. So that's a really good one. And then also there's one on here, HB 67, which has to do with the crime of stalking, and then the
Right.
sex offender list. So there's some really
Yep.
important bills out there for victims' rights, protecting victims, protecting the most vulnerable, our kids in
Mhm.
our state. So yeah, if you're listening, please call your legislators and say, hey, please pass these victim rights bills of HB 68 and HB 67, HB 265, HB 254. We can put them all in the notes of this video,
Yes.
right?
Yes, we
Yeah.
can.
Okay. But yeah, super important.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just love the work you do. Thank you for your story, for being strong, for doing the fight, for teaching the truckers, for reaching out to churches and families and organizations. I mean, you're doing all the things, to raise that awareness and keeping our Alaskan kids safe. And I think that's why I really appreciate you and the bond that I feel with you in this fight.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just thank you so much for that. But before I let you go, we
Yeah.
always ask a guest on the Redemption podcast, what does the word redemption mean to you?
Oh man. Redemption. What a word. God made a way when there was no way. Thank you, God, for Jesus, right?
Mhm.
Don't even know what else to say. He pulled me out of a dark pit, just even my own life, and you know, wiped me clean, offered me forgiveness, and put a white robe on me, and away I went into a new life. And um, I'm forever grateful. And so redemption is a precious, precious gift.
Mhm. It is. Well, thank you so much for being on our podcast today, for taking time. Um,
Thank you for having me.
yes.